This is Mainstreet with Gary Allen.
And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Mainstreet. Gary Allen with you. I hope you've had a wonderful week since the last time we spoke. I hope you had a great 4th of July and everybody had their fireworks, their hamburgers, their hot dogs, etc. We've got a great show for you today, as we do every week. We're on at 2 p.m. Every Tuesday afternoon. As I said, I have a great show, but before I get to that, let me just thank a few people along the way. My studio producer today is Julian. Julian, thank you so very much for taking the time to be with us. Michael and Grant Miller from the C News Network giving us this platform to put these programs on, as well as my executive producer, Rick Del Vecchio. Our community sponsors the Elks Lodges of South Florida, as well as the Japanese Gardens of South Florida. The gentleman that I'm about to introduce to you, I've known for a number of years. He is probably one of the top reality show producers for the last 20 years in L.A. He's produced everything from Vampires in America, Windows of the World, Gator Boys, The Testers, Iron Fire, New Girls on the Block, DUI. He produced the critically acclaimed Little People, Big World. He's done other shows, other productions. He's also been a producer-director for Dr. Phil and his show. There's very little I can say about this man. He's one of my dearest friends in the whole world. When I call upon him, he's always there for me, and that's what this business really brings to me. Would you please welcome, and I'm so pleased to have him on this program, if I can steal from Charlie Rose, Mr. Eric Streit. Eric, welcome.
How are you there? What's happening today? How's everything going up north there, Gary Allen?
Well, in Florida, it's warm, it's hot, it's muggy, and we're trying to stay away from as many storms as we possibly can. How's things in Mexico?
You know, here in Mexico, it's warm, it's muggy. It's kind of the stormy season. We're having power outages and a lot of wind. So, you know, so you never know. I'm hoping we'll make it through this hour without too much interference.
No, well, I think we're going to be fine. Eric, you've been in the business for well over 20 years, and a lot of people, I know what it was like when I first moved to Los Angeles. I know what it was like for you. We've discussed that before, but the people out there may not be aware of, there's an old adage in the business. You don't go to LA or New York to get your act together. You better have your act together before you get there.
That's
and
right.
And talk about that, because I slept in my car for quite a while when I first got there. You slept on the top of the Roosevelt Hotel in a tent. I've always remembered that. And we know that Jay Leno slept in his car for a long, long time. People don't realize there's not enough parts for the amount of people that come out to LA, henceforth the porn industry, I guess, you know. But talk about it, what it was like for you.
Well, you know, when I got out of the military in 1992, and I kind of had this instinct that going straight to Los Angeles would be a bad idea. My goal was to be in the entertainment industry, but the notion of going to Los Angeles straight away, I knew was a bad idea. I don't know why I knew that. I just knew it was not the thing to do. So I went to Florida. And the first thing I did was I got a job at, I wanted to be a stand-up comedian, and I had done some open mic nights in different USOs and on different shipboard talent shows and whatnot along the way. But, you know, I wanted to learn timing and pacing. So I got a job at Gatorland, which in addition to, you know, handling reptiles and wrestling alligators, you stick to a very specific monologue and learn comedy timing. And if you can do a monologue and keep your comedy timing at the same time you're handling deadly reptiles and wrestling alligators, you learn the timing very quickly. And after a few months of doing that, I jumped ship and went to the Magic Kingdom and worked as a Jungle Cruise skipper. Now that, you know, you have to, Disney's very strict about sticking with your script. Mm-hmm. And jokes are very corny. They're very old. Oh, yeah. And there's not a lot of leeway. You have different options on which joke about that you can do, but you pretty much have one script that you have to stick to, and you have to get laughs. If you don't get laughs, you know, back then being a jungle skipper, you were kind of one of the elite, you know, cast members of the park. And if you didn't do well with the Jungle Cruise, you got moved to Mainstreet and were selling balloons or something else. So your goal was to be really, really good at your monologue, so you got laughs and good good guest feedback, which I did. And after doing that, I think for almost a year, I got a job with the Wild West Stunt Show as a host and MC, and we traveled the country doing that. And the whole time I was working as an extra, doing work as a PA, kind of learning how behind the scenes of the television and film industry worked, making those mistakes and learning the rules in Florida, knowing that sometime I would go to Los Angeles. And ultimately, while I was doing the Wild West Stunt Show, there was an old guy who had a midway attraction called Balthazar the Monkey Boy. And Balthazar the Monkey Boy was exactly what it sounded like. It was a very old kind of a Colonel Parker type of character who had a bunch of different costumes, and he would hire a young guy to dress in a monkey suit and be Balthazar the Monkey Boy, half man, half beast, from the jungles of the Amazon, brought to you at great expense by a consortium of philanthropists, philosophers, scientists, adventurers. For a mere $1, you may gaze upon the eighth wonder of the world, Balthazar the Monkey Boy. People would pay $1 and come through, and they'd see a guy in a monkey suit with a Samsonite piece of luggage, beating it on the ground, swinging on a tire swing,
right
around screeching like a monkey, and that went across country. We went from Haines City, Florida, and when I saw that we were at the Palmdale County Fair, I've been with it for about 9 months, and I saw a sign that said Los Angeles, 73 miles, and I counted up my money, and I had a little bit, saved from my cut of being Balthazar the Monkey Boy. And I hitchhiked to LA.
Wow, that had to be interesting. By the way, when did Vicki Rossman enter your world?
I knew Vicki when I lived in Orlando.
She's gone now.
No, I didn't know that. I was talking to her. God, doesn't seem like that long ago. Vicki's passed away.
Yes, about 2 weeks ago. I was home. I got the phone call from the young lady who was taking care of her apartment. She'd been in and out of hospices and stuff for the last few months. I spoke to her the last time, and she sounded alive and well and great. And what I mean by alive is she was perky and everything. No drowsiness, no nothing. And then I was on the phone with Chris DePetta, the owner of the Punchline, and he and I talked about her. And then the next day I get the phone call from this young lady that was staying there that she had passed, and it was all over Facebook. So I figured you probably heard about it, but since you didn't,
I don't check my Facebook a lot, especially when I'm, right now I'm in Mexico working on projects and doing different things. But I just talked to her about 3 months ago, and everything seemed like it was going great.
Yeah, I know, but when it went downhill, it went downhill fast. And for those of you who don't know, Vicki was a comedy agent, and she was also a comedy writer. She taught classes on how to come up with the jokes and how to do things, and the stuff that I learned in LA, because the only way to do comedy is to get on stage and do it, and you're going to fail, and you're going to have the spotlight on you, and you're going to fall and fumble and dumble. But Vicki was there to help a lot of comics get on their way. Besides you, there was also Billy Gardell, who was Chris DePetta is his manager, and there are many others.
Wayne Brady. I mean, she knew Wayne Brady. I mean, Wayne came in and talked at one of our workshops, and I had not developed my comedy very well at all at that point. I was really quite terrible, and in a secondary market, your peers are not going to tell you how bad you are. But Vicki had absolutely no problem of saying, yeah, you don't need to be doing this right now. You need to wait a while. Your material's not connecting. You just spent 5 years in the military and no one's connecting with that. You need to live life a little more and have some experiences before you get up. And, you've got to develop a point of view. And she recommended I just stop, get up and try it. But she said, you're going to fall into a habit of doing, very hacky jokes that don't have your personality and don't have your point of view in them, and you'll get laughs from them, but you won't be unique.
No.
And you won't get recognized, and you won't make
And
it.
you know it. Yeah, I know it's funny. Will Schreiner was on just a couple of weeks ago with me, and we were talking off the air, and he said, "Man, it is tough when you do any kind of comedy now because everybody is wearing everything on their shoulders, and if you say this, you say that, you don't know who you're going to offend to begin with." And his son is out there doing comedy as well. So, I mean, it's a tough business, and
Well, it is. Comedy's when you think about all of the performing arts, stand-up comedy is the one performing art that can never be rehearsed. You can rehearse and you can practice your guitar, your music, your song, the piano, a play, a monologue, but stand-up comedy is only stand-up comedy when you're doing it in front of an audience, and your performance is going to be different every time because the pieces of the instrument of stand-up comedy are your audience, and it's never the same twice. No. So you never have the same performance twice. It really is. If you can stand on the stage for an hour and make an audience laugh, you've accomplished something. And it's the one remaining meritocracy in the entertainment industry, because just because you're related to, Harrison Ford's son might be able to get a part as an actor. Clint Eastwood might be able to cast his children in motion pictures. But, if they want to be stand-up comics, they have to be funny. And, that's one thing I really enjoyed about my life as a stand-up comedian is you succeeded or failed based on your own talent and ability. And I ultimately failed. But, I made a pretty good living at it for 3.5 years before I realized I was not going to, get my peers when I started out were guys like who have achieved greatness. Bill Burr, Louis C.K., Dave Chappelle. Those were the guys that I was, seeing at the Comedy Store and the Improv and other places.
Right.
I didn't. My voice was not that unique. I didn't have that. I didn't have that level of uniqueness. I was a headliner on the road, and I was the marquee name in Elko, Nevada, and Winnemucca, and Idaho Falls. But
in LA,
man, you had to have that unique voice. And, you look at the cream always rises to the top. And as far as stand-up comedy goes, you're not going to beat Chappelle, Bill Burr, and until his fall, Louis C.K.
And I had mine, which was Bob Saget. Bob and I were at the Groundlings together. Mm-hmm. And the first day that I met Bob, well, I met him at the Comedy Store. Hi, how are you? Goodbye. But the first time I really got to talk to him, and you realize that brain is going faster than you can possibly think. And another friend of mine, the late Robin Williams, who was responsible for me being at the Groundlings to begin with, because living in LA, how hard it is. By the way, for you folks who don't know, the Groundlings are like Second City in Los Angeles. They're an improvisational training facility for young actors and comedians. And it's used to be you could get in, take some classes, and move up. But now they won't even let you take classes unless you're already on a TV show. And Robin Williams opened the door for me by making a phone call. I'm sitting across from Bud Friedman at the Improv, and boom, he says, "What's wrong, Gary?" And I said, I auditioned for the Groundlings again. I don't think I got it, blah, 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 blah. So he went up, he made a phone call out of Bud's office, upstairs, came back down. He said, "Call this guy Monday morning, you're in." Now, do I owe that man? I owe that man. When he passed away, I cried like a baby for days. Nobody could console me. Same with Bob Saget. Bob and I were friends for years.
I met Bob Saget a few times. I could never claim that we were friends, but I saw him at the Friars Club on occasion. I knew Louis Anderson, who passed away recently, a little bit better, but that's in comedy. Someone's always on their way out the door. And
how come there's no? This is right in line with what you do. We've talked about this before. How come there isn't anything reality-wise with doing a stand-up comics life on the road?
I think it's been tried many times. it's not interesting. I mean, you know, the thing about any television show or any movie, it's life with all the boring stuff taken out. And if you've been on the road as a stand-up comic, it's deadly boring, except that 1 hour a night when you're standing on stage. I mean, it would end up being only like there's a wonderful documentary right now about Gilbert Gottfried. That's the closest to anything. It's a really powerful documentary. It was finished up not long before he unexpectedly passed away. I don't know where it's streaming. I watched it night before that. And it really captures the road in a unique way, but it's because it's Gilbert Gottfried. But, you know, those of us I was on the road, you know, consistently doing one-nighters, you know, 6 to 8 months out of the year for 3.5, 4 years. And basically you drive and you drive and you drive. You show up at the local television station. You do your 3-minute segment there. You go to the local radio station. You do your 5-minute or an hour there. You go back to the TV station, do your 3 minutes at the TV station again. Then you hang out and try and learn enough for me, I would hang out and try and learn enough about the local community so I could, you know, make my act local, include the most known characters to the small towns and include the mayor and whoever's had a local scandal happening and what is the next town over that everyone makes fun of. And then you go and do another radio show and you go and do the news again. Then you do your show and then you either go back to your hotel room or you jump in the car and start driving because you've got to make it 600 miles to your next show tomorrow. Yeah. That's not a show. That's not, I mean, it's rugged, it's rough, it's hard, but it's not a television show.
No, that's true. Eric Streit is joining us here on Mainstreet, as we do every Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m. Mainstreet. Gary Allen with you. Eric Streit is my guest, a reality show producer for well over 20 years, as well as a producer, director, actor, comedian, stuntman, which I found out recently. And he's also been a dear friend of mine for many, many, many years. What is the most often misunderstood or not understood thing about reality shows when you put those things together? Because everybody comes up and says, oh, I got an idea for a reality show. I'm sure you get it left and right and you've had it for 20 years. What is it that separates the men from the boys in this department?
I think the work. You know, when you're shooting a reality show, if you want, you know, when you take a show like Little People, Big World, we were there with cameras from 6 a.m. to midnight, 6 or 7 nights a week.
Wow.
For me personally, for almost 6 years. And we did 48 episodes a year. I think if you look on IMDb, I think I'm listed as
189.
Is that how many it says I did? 189 on IMDb? I have no idea.
189.
Okay, 189 episodes. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot, you know, and, you know, the family, the participants have to be on board to give you honest access. And, you know, no one grasps that the amount of footage, you know, for every 100 minutes you have 1 minute of broadcastable footage. And that's on a best day. And you remember, you've got usually 2 or 3 cameras rolling. So for every 300 minutes, you've got one broadcast minute. Mm-hmm. And someone's got to look at all that footage. Someone's got to take notes. You've got to have a lot of really talented, really dedicated, really well-paid people to go through all of that footage to compress, you know, that. So say you're getting, you know, 300 minutes of footage, and it's way more than that. It's thousands of minutes for one 42-minute episode. And so it takes a monstrous team to compress that down from, say, 10,000 minutes to 42. And that number is hard to wrap one's head around. How do you get from 10,000 to 42 and do it in 8 weeks? Because that's what your post schedule is. If you're lucky, you get 12. If you've got a big hit show, you get 12 weeks per episode. That's that's max. Sometimes you get 3 weeks for what's called a string out, and that's taking all the raw footage and getting it from, say, 5 to 10,000 minutes down to 88 minutes. And then you give it to an editor, a really skilled, talented editor, who gets it down from 88 to 42. But then he's dropping in music, sound effects, all of the graphics, and the putting the names up and all of these little things. And to be able to do that
Mm-hmm.
in 6 weeks,
Yeah.
good luck.
Yeah.
Very,
That's why it takes a year or so to edit major motion pictures.
well, it takes longer, but here's the thing with major motion pictures, you start with a script and you have pre-production.
Yeah.
I would argue that you could take, and it'll never happen, but I think you could take like a top-notch Mark Burnett level director or reality TV producer and hand them a feature film and they could deliver. I don't think you could take a top-notch film director. I don't care if it's Steven Spielberg or J.J. Abrams. You couldn't put them in a reality television show situation, give them a reality television show budget and say, give me a 42-minute episode in 6 weeks. I don't believe they could do it.
Yeah. Where do the ideas come from? For instance, like Little People, Big World, DUI, Mall Cops, Gator Boys. I mean, do they come directly to you as a producer, or do they come to someone else that brings it to you?
They come from all, look, and I don't want to claim credit. I didn't come up with the idea for Little People, Big World. I was brought in episode 21. And, there was a very talented executive producer who had basically found the Roloff family, and he knew they were something special and something unique. And he championed them for, I think, 5 years to get the pilot.
Wow.
And then another 2 years after the pilot aired to become a series. He dedicated 7 years of consistent work to get that show on the air. And the show became the #1 show in cable television. People forget what a huge impact that show had, but it was one guy's commitment to the idea, and he wouldn't take no for an answer. And nothing like that had ever been done before. And he saw something. He had a vision, and he wouldn't compromise that vision. And the interesting thing about Little People, Big World, there have been studies starting with the 1001 Arabian Nights and the Holy Bible. There has never been, through all of Eastern literature, Western literature, film, television, stage, and motion pictures, until Little People, Big World, a little person had never been portrayed in any form of literature or media without magical powers of some kind.
Really? Wow.
And it changed a lot of people. That show changed the lives and perceptions of so many people. I don't know that I'll ever be a part of a show that has that kind of, not just it had a huge impact on popular culture, and the show's still going strong today.
Yes.
But a show changed the lives and perceptions of an entire subculture in a very positive way. How often does one get an opportunity to do that? And I was really fortunate to come in season 2, episode 21, and stay with the show for up into episode, I think, 217. I can't do the math, but I was with it for a long time.
189 episodes, according to what I'm told. You and I have discussed some of the things that people don't understand about reality shows. Now, you and I have discussed this before. I have not been a huge fan of all reality shows. I don't know anybody in their right mind that probably is. I don't care for the Lost on the Deserted Island or the Naked and Afraid. I don't care for the Housewives show. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I know the guy's making a ton of money from it, the guy who produces it. But boy, does that show women at their worst. I mean, it really does, how greedy, at least these women are in this society atmosphere.
Well, and I would argue that those shows, they're a replacement. They're a modern replacement for the soap opera. And, what soap operas did and what these shows do is they titillate and they fulfill their fantasy fulfillment. You're seeing people, the thing about soap operas and shows like Real Housewives is you're seeing very wealthy people who behave badly. And if you're, and it makes the broad swath of the population feel better about themselves.
But
And
isn't that what, like you and I've discussed before, that in order to have a good reality show, there must be this constant, like a football game, the offense against the defense. There must be friction going on in order for it to keep moving forward.
you've got to have, I call it the Bermuda Triangle of reality television. You have to have stakes, deadlines, and conflict. And when you look at a show like Real Housewives, they have all of those in spades, and it is a soap opera. I think it's very scripted to a degree. I think that it's I've never worked on those shows, so I can't say. But when you look at those shows, it's the same thing every week. They follow a strict formula, and they're hit shows. So I mean, what is the definition of good? It's not in my demographic. It's not a show that I care to watch. But I'll say this: I worked on season 8 of Naked and Afraid in Africa, and that, my friend, is the most real show I've ever been involved with. I mean, there is, every show other than that I've been on has a degree of stand over here, let's get your entrance again. No, the folks that do that show are they're purist to a level that once a day you talk to the folks and ask them their interview questions. You are there documenting what they go through, and that's it. Now, it's 8 seasons. I guess they're now into shooting season 9 or maybe even 10. I don't know.
Yeah, they're still on because you can catch it, and it's like, I guess the first one was the one where they're left on the island.
I don't know if they were left on. I don't know. I don't.
No, not the Naked and Afraid, but I mean the first reality show was the one was Survivor. Yeah. Now I didn't like that show. I don't like Big Brother. I'll be honest with you. You and I've discussed this before. I've watched your show. Your shows I'll watch. I will, because you're like a brother to me, and I love you. And someday, I still say, sir, someday you're going to direct me in something. I don't know what it is. I could be walking right through a scene, and that's the end of it. But that's the end of it. But the bottom line is it's taken over, as my good friend Will Schreiner will say, it's taken over, and it's made things less expensive for the studios to produce these programs.
But and I'll say this, what happened, when I first started in the industry, the reality business side of it, I was doing stand-up comedy, 6 or 7 months out of the year. And instead of waiting tables, the other 5 or 6 months of the year, I was working as a reality television show producer. And you didn't tell people about, I'm working in it was not anything that you broadcast. You didn't want to talk about it. It was considered, lowbrow and almost like being in pornography. You didn't discuss that you were working in reality. It was very considered, like a career ender if anyone found out. And one day I was at the Friars Club, and all of my peers that knew I was doing reality were like encouraging me to stop. But the money was very good, especially what is a stand-up comic going to do for a day job? I'm a terrible waiter. I'm not about to be valet parking cars.
Eric, how many times have we talked and you said, well, Gary, what are you working at now? Because it's like, I only know one thing, and this is what it is.
Yeah. So, one day I was seriously considering getting out of it and then Sid Caesar said, hey, I hear that you're doing this reality thing. I'm like, yeah, and everyone's kind of giving me a hard time and, saying maybe I should think about doing something else that it's going to hurt my reputation. And he rattled. I said, well, let me ask you this. He said, I was a Broadway actor. I was doing comedy and I was doing shows on Broadway, and I'd had like a long hiatus, which basically means he was unemployed. He said, and I started doing television. I was making a deal to do a television show. Yeah. And he said, and Bernie Hirschbaum and, Victoria, and he rattled off all these names, said that I shouldn't do it, that it was going to ruin my career. He said, have you ever heard of any of those people? And he said, have you ever heard of Sid Caesar? I said, well, yes. Of course, because Sid Caesar basically invented sketch comedy for television. And when I would go to his house, the man, I think, had 7 Emmys in his office gathering dust on a shelf up above. And many other accolades. He was one of the most talented, funny men ever. And he was told that if what he said about reality, he said, look, this industry has not had anything unique or new or different in 50 years.
Yeah.
You should get in on the ground floor of this and you should work. And I did, and I have, and, at various levels. And,
Yeah. What, you and I've talked about this too. People think that the reality stars and the co-stars and all that other stuff are rich, and they're not.
No,
they're not. I mean, the housewives, yeah, those women were wealthy to begin with, or they married into it, whatever. But yeah.
What I'll say about the on-camera people on a reality show, whatever you are in your real life, reality shows, it enhances what's already there. It makes you more of who you already were. There is money, but it's not get rich money. Not unless you're going to go 200 episodes. You look at, Chip and Joanna Gaines, of course, they had 2 million viewers a week, and now they have their own network, but that's a rarity. That's 1 in a million or 1 in 1,000, whatever the odds are. But, the typical reality person that does 1 to 3 seasons of a show, they have bragging rights for the rest of their life. But, the show doesn't last and doesn't get legs, in a year, no one's going to remember it. And you do it, because you want people to hear your story, to find out about whatever it is in your life that's unique and different that you want to share with a broader audience. And it can, a lot of people now say, well, it builds your brand. If you have a brand, sure. It can do that, and it's very successful at doing that for people. Look at the Orange County chopper guys. Look how many motorcycles they sold as a reactor.
But now they're practically bankrupt.
Well, if you make $5 million and you spend $5 million, you're going to be bankrupt.
Yeah, exactly.
$5 million, what I recommend to everybody who gets a show is don't change any aspect of your life. Keep living like you've always lived. The little bit of money you make, whether it's $1,000 an episode or $10,000 an episode, is not going to be life-changing if you spend it as you go. If you hold on to it, because when you work on one of these shows, you're working, 24 hours a day, basically. You're always on call. You're on the show. And if you go out and buy a Porsche or a Lamborghini or, drop your first season's pay on, building a new wing on your house, you're going to end up worse off than you started. You have to be, and look, I am probably the worst example of financial intelligence of anyone. They don't teach finances in high school. We all walk out into the world basically ignorant and are thrown to the winds of change and fortune. And most of us don't do very well. I've made a lot of money in my career, and I've spent that money staying in my career. So I'm in an okay place, but I'm not a multi-millionaire.
No.
And not many people in reality television are, unless you're one of the top network guys. It just, I compare it to being a high-end plumber or electrician in a very wealthy upper middle class town.
Yeah.
I suspect the folks in reality TV and make about the same thing that the plumbers and electricians who service the houses in Martha's Vineyard make.
Yeah. You're listening to Mainstreet with Gary Allen, along with my guest, Eric Streit. We're on at 2 p.m. every Tuesday afternoon. And next week, we have a wonderful guest for you. She's an author who has written a book about her time in Zambia when she worked for the Peace Corps. So I'm looking forward to having Christina Herbert on next week. But right now, we have Mr. Eric Streit on, who is a reality show producer and a very dear friend of mine. The funny thing is, we were talking about the Housewives show, and they've had different Housewives of Orange County, Housewives here, Housewives there. The one in Hollywood is the one that's like the big hit now. And I remember when that first got going, I remember Will Schreiner and I were sitting and talking because Kelsey Grammer is an old friend of ours from his days as a surfer in Fort Lauderdale. Kelsey grew up in Fort Lauderdale, where Will and I and a few others grew up. And I remember Will saying, we told him never to marry that woman, never marry her. And boom, 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 you know, I mean, and then any show that has Lisa Rinna on it, I'm sorry, it's doomed. It's just doomed. I just don't like that woman at all. She's
Why? Have you ever met her?
yes.
Oh well.
Yes.
I
Her
thought
and the woman from Taxi, the one that dated Travolta forever. I met her once too, and I was not, you know, she just looked at me like she looked right through me. I wasn't even there, you know. Oh, this is Gary Allen. He's a comedian, a member of the Groundlings, blah, 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 blah. He's done Hill Street Blues. And she goes, oh, how nice. And she just, you know, like I didn't even exist. Eric, when you did a project dealing with one of my favorite subjects in the whole world, and that's the Knights Templar. But that was part of a series of shows that you did. Talk about that and how it got, how you got involved.
Well, nothing, there's nothing groundbreaking about it. There was a wonderful show called Legendary Locations, hosted by Josh Gates. They had a big order to do these shows, and I got a call from a friend who recommended me. I went in, I interviewed, I got the job, and I did segments for episodes in Portugal, Italy, and upstate New York. I think I did segments for, I believe I did 9 or 12 segments. Spent a lot of time in Sicily. Spent quite a bit of time in Portugal and quite a bit of time in upstate New York. And one of my favorite segments, of course, was the Knights Templar, because it's a subject that's dear to my heart. Yeah. We basically recreated the last days of the Knights Templar and the cup of, the notion that the Knights Templar, had found the cup of Christ and were guarding it. And it was a secret that the last head of the Knights Templar, Jacques de Molay, took to his grave. And a very good friend of mine, Michael Lawler, who is a member of the modern day Knights Templar, he's a fascinating character. He's a wonderful friend of mine from the Adventurers Club. I was the president of the club for 2 years, and Michael was the president of the club for a couple of years.
And I'm hoping soon you're going to put me in touch with him, because like you, I am fascinated by the Knights Templar.
Yeah. And he actually, these shows are not done on a big budget, but, he was gracious enough and wanted to be involved. So he paid his own way to Portugal, and he and I bunked up because we didn't even have extra money for hotel rooms. He stayed in my room, and he played Jacques de Molay, brought his own costume,
really, which
was much better than the costumes we were renting, and he played Jacques de Molay, and we found an 11th century castle in Portugal that the Knights Templar had actually guarded, and had been a Knights Templar castle, and we did some amazing battle sequences, and it was a wonderful time. We spent, I guess Michael was there for maybe 2 weeks, and he did some other segments with me as well. But the story of the Knights Templar and their history, and the notion that the Knights Templar never really broke up, but they just escaped and went underground. And it's believed that the Holy Grail is still being guarded in Ethiopia by the modern day Knights Templar. And who knows? Only members of the Knights Templar would know for sure, right?
Well, I've always believed this, and when the King of France came down on them because of all the money that he owed them, and that's the only reason that this occurred, and then the Catholic Church went against them, et cetera, et cetera. I believe, my opinion, because they started up the first banks in Europe, I believe they went to Switzerland, because suddenly, out of nowhere, overnight, after the King of France went after them, suddenly everything they had disappeared. It left the castle that was there. Their fleet came in, went out, and disappeared, and no one has heard of those men since. I believe they went to Switzerland, where they started the banking industry there, And what Switzerland has now for the banking industry, I think, was started by the Knights Templar.
That's an interesting theory because, the Swiss guards are the ones that look after the Pope and the Vatican. It's not the Italian army.
No.
It is the Swiss. So you might be onto something very fascinating. A lot of folks have pondered whether the, what is the name of the very devout Opus Dei might be have sprung from the era of the Knights Templar and grown from there.
Yeah.
And, just because they went to Switzerland, if that's what happened, doesn't mean that they also don't still guard the Holy Grail in Ethiopia.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and we'll know someday, maybe we will know, but I have been fascinated by the Knights Templar. And by the way, is it missing on you the way it has on some friends of mine when I pointed out that the character that Roger Moore played, the Saint, was named Simon Templar?
It's fascinating, isn't it? Do you think I'm always interested in that type of thing. And I always have to ask myself, as someone who's written shows, just because you put it in a show doesn't mean the conspiracy is real. Then again, there's a school of thought that if you've ever seen it in a movie, it had to have really happened.
Yeah.
The truth, it probably lies somewhere in between. I don't know. But yeah, the Saint is fast. If the Knights Templar were still trying to remain a secret organization, why would they, put a television show out there in an era when, Britain
no, I just think the guy who created the Saint was probably fascinated by the Templar and named him Simon Templar. I mean, it's like the character that Eric Braeden plays on The Young and the Restless. Victory, Newman, being an adopted child, now he's suddenly blossomed into this rich guy. Victor Newman, it's like.
Well, and even you think about, even the casting of Roger Moore, if you look at him before that, he was in the Robin Hood series. And there was very often, a lot of the costumes were Templar costumes, probably just because that's what was in the wardrobe department. But the old Robin Hood series from the 50s starring Roger Moore was full of Knights Templar symbolism. And I think it was just, Prince John's men put him in British costumes, and they just happened to have, the Templar cross.
And he also played Ivanhoe.
But that.
Yeah. He played Ivanhoe.
I meant Ivanhoe, not Robin Hood. Pardon me.
Yeah, he played Ivanhoe, and that was kind of interesting. Getting back to the reality shows, because we just went on our little jaunt. Are reality shows where they were a couple of years ago when you and I talked about it, kind of dying out now?
No. No. And reality shows are very much the modern soap opera. They're done. They're kind of the little engine that drives the rest of the industry in a lot of ways. A sitcom, a hit sitcom takes a decade to go into profit because there's so much money. These are big shows with big money invested, and it has to go into syndication and be a hit for 5 years and get into syndication before it turns a profit. Reality shows turn a profit from day one, and it's a big profit. And now that the Discovery Networks owns Warner Brothers, I would expect we'll see more reality shows.
Yeah, which brings up, have we almost run out of ideas, or is it just?
No, we haven't run out of ideas. For reality shows, oh my God, no. Because the thing that makes reality shows different from any other part of the industry is the show is not about an idea. A reality show isn't about the idea. A reality show is about the people, and every person is unique. Every person, you meet people in your life, and would you want to watch a show with them, starring them? And if you've met a person who you want to make that you would be interested in knowing more about, that's a person who could be in a good show. And I liken it to stand-up comedy in a way, because, just because, you have industry connections doesn't mean you're going to be good in a reality show. For the same reason, a stand-up comedian can stand on a stage for an hour and make an audience laugh. It's an innate gift. That's a lot of discipline. But for reality shows, they are also a great equalizer. The people that star in the biggest reality shows are not industry insiders. They're the Roloff family. They're, the Orange County chopper guys. They're, people from Middle America and the South and the Northeast, and New Jersey had a moment, and Alaska's got a moment, and Houma, Louisiana had their moment. It's unique people living unique lives that people are fascinated with. And as long as the world has unique and fascinating people, you're going to get more reality shows.
Yeah.
And, the scripts are, the storylines might sometimes be contrived to fit into, a half-hour, 1 hour format. But what you're always going to have is a core believability and relatability of the people who are starring in those reality shows.
Okay, with that said, Little People, Big World cast compared to the Housewives cast.
Different type of show. Different type of show.
But I mean, different type of ego, different type of reason for being there.
I don't know. I mean, look, it's at the end of the day, it's a job.
Yeah.
It's an industry, it's a business, and I can't speak to the Real Housewives because I've never worked on that show or any of those types of shows. I prefer the shows that, I prefer, Great Food Truck Race, Naked and Afraid, Little People, Big World, anything that takes you in a situation where where the people are real and the situations are real. That to me are the best reality shows, but that's my taste, and right. I do my best when I'm working on those types of shows.
When I was not that many years ago, PBS used to have a group of shows on how to do it kind of things with Norm Abrams, with his flannel shirt on. And I always still say to people, when I see them in a flannel shirt, I go, "Oh, you've been to Norm's house for his big sale," and I used to like those shows.
And, that was made in the USA.
Yeah. But yeah. I also like a show that's done out of Canada called Homes on Homes. Mike Holmes goes in, fixes up your house, et cetera, et cetera. I've tried to get him on the show, but he doesn't really do a whole lot. I guess we've lost, have we lost Eric temporarily? Julian, have we lost him temporarily? I guess we have. Well, we were talking about the Homes on Homes show, which I really like a lot because he goes in, he takes care of people's homes, he fixes them up, and sometimes at his own expense, he'll go in and fix them up. And he gets people to donate product for his particular shows, for the particular clients that he needs to have things done, whether it be air conditioning or heating units or wall units or paint or electrical stuff that needs to be done. He does a great job. So, that's what I like. I'm not crazy about the Housewives show or any of the other crazy stuff. Julian, are we able to get Eric back? I guess not at this particular point in time. It was great having him on. It's difficult to get a hold of him at times because he's out producing other shows and he's in Mexico living on a full-time basis. I hope some of you got an idea of what it's like dealing with reality shows. They're not easy. You don't get rich from them. And it depends on what goes on. And sometimes it's not always the reality you think it is. There has to be sometimes a built-in a script, some friction, and there has to be some sort of non-reality reality going on the program that's manufactured in order to keep the show interesting and keep it going. I mean, you wouldn't really want to watch a show if it wasn't interesting, would you? No, I don't think so. You wouldn't want to watch a show if it was just all everybody agreeing with each other No, you wouldn't watch that. So there's got to be a little bit of a friction that goes on, and that's understandable. That's definitely understandable. Eric has been, as I said, a producer for an awful lot of different shows. I wanted to get into here. I wanted to get into Gator Boys and some of the other shows that he has produced over the years, and of course, working for Dr. Phil. It would be nice to have him back, but there are problems somewhere along the line. Like I said, Eric is in Mexico, where he is producing some shows, and he lives down there most of the time. So, maybe if we can get him back at some point or another. But at any rate, we've got some great shows coming up for you in the next couple of weeks. The Color of the Elephant will be a book that we'll be talking about next week with Christina Herbert. She's written this book about her dream of living in Africa and working for the Peace Corps. And I think that's going to be fascinating, where you have to deal with everything from her living in a mud hut to dealing with poisonous snakes to the parasites that are living in Africa. And we're going to talk about her time there. She also contracted malaria, which is still with her to this day from time to time. And we're going to talk about that. But we'll talk about her adventures and her dream of working in the Peace Corps and her dream of going to Africa. And for a lot of you out there, if you've never traveled to Africa, it's not what you think it is. I mean, it's a beautiful country. It's an impoverished country, a continent, I should say, excuse me. And many of the countries are impoverished. And, but it's a fascinating read. And she takes us through the ups and downs, the ins and outs of everyday living in Africa, and how wonderful it was for her, and how she fell in love with the people from Zambia, and how she fell in love with Africa, and her work with the Peace Corps, which was one of the many wonderful things that she always wanted to do. And we'll talk to her about her adventures. We're also going to have a special guest, which I will talk about at the beginning of the show next week. And then we have some other shows. Ron McGill is going to be joining us down the road in a few weeks. Of course, Ron McGill is with the Zoo Miami. He was supposed to be on with us about a month ago or so, and he's going to talk about the zoo and all that's going on. We'll have our Elks show at the first Tuesday of every month, and I hope you tune in for that. We're excited about the possibilities of expanding that show beyond just once a month. We're thinking about maybe once a week, which would be great. We're highlighting the different lodges throughout the state of Florida. We're working on that now, and we'll see if that comes to fruition. We hope it certainly will, and we hope that all of you out there are enjoying all these different shows. And if you don't get a chance to watch it live, we will be rebroadcasting this here on the Community News Network, and you'll be able to watch the show again. We hope you do. Sorry that Eric apparently will not be joining us again. Technical difficulties, that's what happens when you're doing a live show. You just never know when a show will sometimes stop and the guests will have to go because of technical difficulties. But Eric has always been a gentleman, and I'm very grateful to him for coming on the particular program. And I'm also very grateful to all of you out there for taking the time out of your day to join us. And as like I said, we're going to have a number of great shows coming up for you in the coming weeks. And we hope that you enjoy everything that we do here. And again, I just want to thank some of the people that make this show possible. It's Michael and Grant Miller from the C News Network for giving us this platform. My executive producer, Rick Del Vecchio. My studio producers of Andres and Elian and Julian and Mike. And our community sponsors, the Japanese Gardens of Miami, as well as the Elks Lodges of Miami, South Miami, and their continued support. And I just wanted to say that I am very grateful to all of you. For many, many years when I lived in South Florida, and hopefully one of these days, if I can get back there, hopefully soon, I definitely would like to get back home at some point or another. I loved it very much. I loved living down there. I love the people of South Florida. And this program is all about you. So if you're watching this program, or you have a friend who's watching this program, you're a business person, or if you're someone running for political office, give us a call. You can call Rick Del Vecchio at 305-992-0703. That's 992-0703, area code 305. Give him a call. Say, hey, I'd like to be on the program. And if you're thinking about maybe sponsoring this program, which we would love very, very much to have you do, as we do have our community sponsors, we'd love that very, very much as well. And like I said, there's some possibilities of the Elks organization, the Elks Lodges becoming a regular show, a weekly force. And that's what we want to do. We want to reach out to you in the Miami community. This show is about the Miami community. I bring the celebrity people on, I bring my actor friends on, et cetera, et cetera. But this show is all about you, to entertain you and not to bore you. So I hope you enjoy this particular program, and I hope you continue to watch. And you know, like I said, we have some great programs coming up for you in the upcoming weeks. We have a young lady who will be coming on who used to be Sally Jesse Raphael's producer. She's going to be talking about the show business. We have business people coming on as we move forward, and we'd like to hear from you. There's a comment section that you can sign up for here, and every week, and make comments, ask questions of our guests. And please, please do take advantage of the situation, take advantage of this platform to help your business grow, because that's what we're here for, to help you, to help us, to help everybody. Because if we help each other, we're going to grow. We're going to make it there, and we're going to be good. So with that said, we're going to end the show a little bit earlier than normal this week. So without further ado, I just want to thank all of you, and I hope you join me next week at 2 p.m. right here on the C News Network. This is Gary Allen for Mainstreet saying until next week, please take care of yourselves and each other.